I've coached right now over 2,000 clients who were having a chronic illness to go through the emotional release work that is necessary for them to heal. And I'd like to share something crucial. Most people, especially in the beginning, are doing it in a way that it makes their symptoms worse. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but there are some things that really could be avoided. Also, the releases could result in an immediate dissipation of your symptoms, meaning you feel something through and after that, the symptom, the fatigue is gone. Yet, usually this doesn't happen in the beginning, and sometimes the symptoms can even get worse. So, it's tough, and it's okay to be tough, and we should talk about it. So feel free to share in the comments what you're struggling with, what your process is like, and know that the same happened for me in the past. When I started having a chronic illness, it took me 1 year to stumble upon emotional work. And when I did, I immediately dived like a crazy man in inner child healing. That caused me to cry all day, every day. My symptoms got a lot worse. I was forcing myself to cry things that weren't ready to be released. You can look at the emotional body like an onion with thousands of layers. And right now, your body wants to shed these layers. You have carried it with you very, very long time. You have suppressed your emotions. You have stored them in the body because it wasn't safe or accepted to express them. But now it's time to release them. One by one, your body will show you the way. So by connecting with your breath, you can connect with the line of breathing that's here. Just to say that. That's exactly where you store the emotions right at the moment when you're able to process it. Also, right at the moment where your limbic system of the brain perceives it as a danger and creates a mind-body symptom, and also the moment where you're unconsciously going to enter a stress pattern. Now, when your brain is creating a mind-body symptom, think about fatigue, anger, fatigue, pain, depression, vertigo, burning mouth, you'll notice that all of these symptoms are everywhere but here. So these symptoms are in a way distraction mechanisms. And in order to work, they need to scream louder than the emotional stress. Therefore, you are probably not aware of the actual emotion behind your current symptoms. And that's as well perfectly normal, because these symptoms are so extreme that they're destroying your life. They want you to obsess about it, and you are probably obsessing about it. You are very stressed. You have no idea what's going on, and your life is being destroyed by these symptoms that force you to stay in bed in a miserable state. And every day you become more afraid of having less of a life and having more symptoms and not being the person that you want to be. Yet, this is in a way exactly the purpose. Your body prefers these mind-body symptoms over the experience of the emotional sensation. That means that the emotional sensation is more overwhelming in the short term than these symptoms. So telling people that it is emotional is really not condescending. It's actually more empowering. And it's also honoring the emotional overwhelm. We're not just talking about 1 year of stress or an emotion that just comes and be released, etc. Sometimes we're talking about 40, 50, or 60 years of stored emotional stress. Imagine that. Anger. Every day you store a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. At that moment, you're no longer just a little bit angry. You're furious. You're completely enraged. And that's why the limbic system of the brain protects you against it. It perceives it as a danger because it's extremely overwhelming, and because you have suppressed it, you have primed yourself that these emotional stressors in your body are a danger for your survival. Otherwise, you wouldn't have suppressed it. Therefore, engaging in these emotions will, in the short term, always result in an increase in symptoms. That's just the way it is. And you can prepare yourself. And I think that's very, very crucial to prepare yourself for the emotional releases via, for example, journaling, via connecting these emotions in a very short moment with something pleasant. So let's say you think about anger or fear or guilt or shame. You connect that after 1 minute of writing or 2 minutes of writing about it with something pleasurable, like a bar of chocolate or a little piece of chocolate or the warmth of your bed or nice music. Over time, you program yourself that these emotions are not that dangerous. But that doesn't lead to immediate improvement. In fact, it does the opposite. It sort of breaks the wall, the protection wall that you have created in your conscious mind. And when you start sleeping, for example, you calm down, you're no longer in that conscious state of resistance that you're doing every day by overthinking, by pushing, by distracting. Instead, you open up and a lot of stuff will come to the surface. Then at night, you might experience extreme symptoms. Again, this is part of the process. Apart from the preparation tool, it's really crucial to give yourself messages of safety. And the most powerful messages of safety is to connect with the present moment. And I know that a lot of people can't do this for a longer period of time because that also causes the stress, the emotional stress to come to the surface. So bit by bit, you become more present, you become more in this moment by connecting with your senses, seeing, hearing, touch, taste, etc. And you connect more with the body, for example, via a body scan. And that gives the body a message of safety, a necessary step for you to calm down just a little bit before you can explore the emotional stressor along your organs. And the emotional stressor along your organs is not something that you can decide that is there. It's deciding it. And you can connect with that, for example, with inner child work. And I put here a video that that does that with you. And also put the link in the description. Another really cool safety tool is to do everything at a 70% speed, where you don't focus on the result, but you focus on the action itself. That takes the fight or flight energy out of everything that you're doing. Also, fight or flight energy is also lying in bed and distracting, or sometimes even overthinking, doom scrolling. That adds more stress to your body, resulting in more emotional stress and more symptoms. Another necessary step in this process is to learn to differentiate yourself from your emotional experience. On one hand, there is an emotion, which is a visitor passing through, and on the other hand, there is you. You can't confuse these to be one. You are not the emotion, you are the observer, and you need to practice the observing. In our society, we have unfortunately programmed ourselves to not do this. So most people have never really engaged with their own emotions in a healthy way. And I think this is causing all kinds of troubles everywhere around the world. It's all about coping mechanisms that we do to avoid feeling, like pushing through, performing, greed, manipulation. And I think that every problem in the world is caused by our emotional state. Therefore, it's really good that you are ready to take the next step of evolution into becoming someone who has released their emotions, who is no longer influenced by an unconscious emotional state, because these emotions are influencing you no matter what. If you can be aware of it, but likely after years of suppression, you are not aware of it. It becomes normal. And when people start engaging with these emotions, they'll notice that, this was something that I had my entire life, but I wasn't aware of it. Something that you would need to do during this entire process is to reconnect again and again with your body. This is where the emotional stress is, along the line of breathing between the throat and the bladder. Can you actually feel this? Can you feel your breath? Can you notice if it's shallow or fast? And know that shortnesses of breath or shallow breaths is all related to an emotional stressor that you have to breathe through. Meaning it's also an opportunity to connect with that exact something. A lot of the times when people have shortness of breath, there is a lot of emotional overwhelm in their chest. So can you feel this right now? And can you comment it in the comment section below? What it is, how you're feeling it, how you are describing it. Because that sort of starts a relationship with the emotional stress. And later on, we can also say that this is not really an emotion, but it's the inner child. Meaning, at a certain age, when you started suppressing an emotion, you stored it, you swallowed it, and it's still waiting there. And that version is still acting like a little child. Sometimes when it's triggered, you'll notice that you start behaving like a little child. For example, a few years ago, I was really angry at Valentina and I started screaming in German, "Nein, nein, nein, nein," like a 2-year-old. That was when she triggered an inner child. Most people are not fond of that. They think they blame the other, which I also did. But this is a huge opportunity because in a way I was acting like a 2-year-old. My brain at that moment was perceiving not the emotion as a danger, well, also the emotion, but more importantly, I was the emotion and it perceived me as a danger. Therefore, a lot of times when clients start connecting with their emotions, their brain perceives them as a danger, and then their symptoms amplify. In that case, the emotion of anger was being triggered, and I first felt it as frustration. If you are frustrated in your chronic illness recovery journey, maybe about not really doing the releases in the right way, for example, then know that actually you are doing it in the right way. The frustration that you're experiencing is probably much older than this process. So it's perfectly all right. A lot of times I receive messages of people telling me their emotional state and telling me that because of that, they can't really do the releases. For example, they feel that they're not doing it right. That's an emotional feeling. Or they don't feel good enough for the emotional releases. That's an emotional state. Or they feel that they are inferior because they don't experience a full release. That's also an emotional state. But in the beginning, we might confuse it. And then altogether with some symptoms and frustration, it all becomes one big pile. But also, this is a good phase. This is necessary. Here's the thing. When this is happening, you are not failing. Instead, you are actually succeeding. The thing, however, is that our thoughts, our ego, our mind, our personality has been created around not engaging with your emotions. So, for example, I was a performer, I was a pleaser, I was an achiever, I was someone that provided and did everything right. I was a good man. And all of that were actions to avoid an emotional truth inside of me that I no longer consciously felt. So the resistance is becoming huge. Because maybe after many years of fragmenting ourselves in hundreds and different of parts by suppressing parts, by creating protection mechanisms, we have created a very big dynamic of all kinds of aspects in ourselves that are at war with each other and that basically only want one thing, and that is to bully the inner child and to express something that might eventually lead to the exact opposite of this emotional truth. That's not how it works. We can't resolve an emotional state by reaching something in the future. It's impossible, because no matter what you're doing, the emotional state will stay the exact same way in your body. So the only solution is, after years of suppressing, to surrender to your body, to allow everything completely, to feel it through and to listen to your emotions as if they were messengers. And these messengers, they didn't want to just disturb your life. Maybe the very opposite. They wanted you at that moment to install a boundary, to create a better life for you. For example, with anger, it wanted you to protect yourself from something. With fear, it wanted you to avoid something very dangerous. By not engaging in these emotions and boundaries, you're telling yourself that you don't matter. A huge part of the shame is the result of you denying your own being in favor of the peace, in favor of your parents, or in favor of society. And I get it. Sometimes anger is extremely overwhelming and even dangerous. So one should really learn to express it in a safe way. And a safe way is, for example, the ways that we're doing it in the release program when you're by yourself. Not creating stress to other people, but really feeling it through, even the shame, because shame ultimately just wants you to feel it through. Shame doesn't really want a lot. It's just telling you to yourself that a part of you is feeling absolutely worthless because you refuse to look at it. And it tries to grab your attention with that message. So it doesn't mean anything about you. It's just a temporary emotional state that is being triggered again and again by rejecting parts of yourself. So it wants you to completely allow it and to feel the pain of being ashamed, of being separate, of being a failure. And that's something that you need to go through. That's something that you need to feel. And doing that is not going to destroy your life. In fact, the very opposite. You will reconnect with an emotion, with a part of you, with a fragment of you, with an inner child. You'll become more whole. You have less emotional stress. And over time, you have less need to experience symptoms. And then, after a certain moment, the dam breaks. Have you experienced this? Maybe you'll start crying and you cannot stop. Maybe you're on the verge of sending me an email. Daniel, what should I do? Should I try to stop it? And the answer is no. Your symptoms will likely amplify. That's what it is. But basically, you got two options. The first option is to squeeze the stress back into your body, which is what a lot of therapies are doing with stop techniques and brain retraining. That's not working in the long term. It's not a solution for the problem. It may be a temporary fix, like a Band-Aid. The other option is to cry and to release it. And maybe it's not even a primary emotion. Maybe it's secondary. You know, the secondary emotions of having a miserable life, which is the result of the symptoms, which is the result of suppressing other emotions that you probably can't feel yet. You need to get through this phase. Maybe it takes a week, and maybe it will come back. This is a phase that almost everyone goes through. And if you're in this phase, then know that it's all right. Write it as well in the comment and write about how this feels for you. Is this for you easy? What happens? What does it do with your symptoms? Is it increasing? Or maybe it needs you a lot more sleep to take a lot more sleep. Because eventually, when you go through an emotional layer, you remove the resistance, the stress, and the body can relax. What happens then is that the body starts getting heavy. That's when the immune system can kick in and restore and recover. And that means that you are going to need a lot of sleep. Also perfectly fine, but it can also feel like a threat because before you felt wired and now you feel completely exhausted. And you're like, what's going wrong? You're overthinking, and before you know it, you're stressing again, fight or flight behavior, and you no longer experience that. This is exactly the type of medicines that we use in our Western world. We give people stress, like stress pills with artificial stress hormones to temporarily get them out of the healing phase, which is so incredibly healing, especially when you really can finish the emotional releases. And eventually, not everyone can do this immediately. You can experience that by focusing on, for example, the stress in your chest, that your symptoms will amplify. And then you start distracting from it again, and then it winds down. Then you can focus on it again, okay? And then it winds down after that. This means that you have started to empower yourself by knowing exactly what is causing your symptoms. And by experiencing this once, and by then, for example, doing the release, one of the release tools that I'll comment below in the playlist, you can experience that. You can directly influence your symptoms by turning it on and off. Not just the mind-body symptoms, but also the stress symptoms. And I think that's a necessary step. Even after that, when you have maybe 999 other layers to release, every time when your body develops a different symptom, to try and grab your attention, to pull it away from your emotional body, you'll know exactly what to do. And it's not easy. Maybe you'll need to find another rhythm of going through that emotion. You know, maybe you have already taught yourself to feel anger, but what about fear? What about disgust? What about shame? What about guilt? All of these emotions need different things, but ultimately, it's all about feeling them through. I talked about full releases, but to be very honest with you, most people experience partial releases, meaning they connect with their inner child, they're able to cry a little bit, but not enough. And that's as well perfectly normal. This can also enhance the symptoms, and write it as well in the comments if you have experienced this. It's also quite empowering because you know exactly what is causing your symptoms to be amplified. Maybe you'll need 3 or 4 or 5 releases or gradual partial releases until it gets better. Maybe you won't really experience that it gets better. Maybe you have some sort of like recalibration symptoms, like a difficulty of breathing or a headache or feeling completely weird as well. That's also completely normal. And I think I must be very honest about that. Because for a week ago, I uploaded a video about the happiness that is the result of a full release. Well, everyone would love to experience a full release, but all of these tiny releases are in the end just as healing. And expanding on the emotional boundaries, what can you learn after every emotion? What does it need? And implementing the necessary steps is crucial from avoiding the same emotion to arise. Maybe it wants you to live in a different way. What is the first step? We don't have to immediately think about the result. What are the tiny steps that you can do to feel emotionally better? Thank you for watching, and I'll create a part 2. Ask your questions as well if you have other questions that I didn't mention, and I'll make a follow-up video. And as well on the website, you can find as well all the release sessions that we have for free. Those are beginner sessions. They are not advanced. That's to protect you from overwhelm. And in the release program, we guide you all the way. I wish you a beautiful healing journey.